Welcome to All Villa, No Filler. Subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or follow us on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcasts. Unai Emery has extended his contract with Aston Villa to 2027. To talk more about that is the Athletics Aston Villa reporter, Jacob Tanswell. Jacob, it's great to have you on. You've been producing brilliant articles this season, and there was another one today. All about Unai Emery, all about this new contract extension. With what you know, how did this deal come about?
Yeah, it happened very fast. I wasn't aware of anything until yesterday morning. There's a lot of links to Bayern Munich. Unai got asked about it after the game against Bournemouth, um, and I always felt that was outlandish, ambitious because Bayern Munich are a huge team, but at the same time they're very public in their opinions. Sporting directors, the technical directors give their opinions a lot. They're very publicly facing, and I don't think that gave Unai the power that he ultimately wanted. So I always felt a contract would be more likely. He had this thing in his contract which was until 2026. People thought it was until 2027, but there was a clause in it, essentially like a break clause. I'm not too sure about the specifics, but it would mean that he had an opportunity to leave in 2026 if he wanted to. What's happened is that essentially they've all decided to extend it to 2027. But most crucially and best of all for Villa fans is that they intend to sit down in the summer and really thrash out a new deal. So this is something that's been on the books for a while. He's been over to the States to see Wes Edens. He obviously in touch with Nassef Sawiris, who comes to a few games recently. And they're all on the same page and very excited about what they can achieve all together.
Yeah, it is definitely a very, very exciting move, and it does feel like Aston Villa kind of around the footballing side, everywhere in the club, really. It's all building towards something. And I guess with Sawiris and Edens, they must be incredibly pleased with what Emery's done so far, as is everyone involved with Villa. But how do they see Emery potentially for the future?
I've wrote in my article that they see him as a Wenger Ferguson type, and a few comments saying, "Well, that's ambitious," and it is, but it's not what I think. It's what the two owners think in terms of building a legacy, a dynasty where he's there for a long term. He's the one that essentially is running the club. Look at it's a bit of an old-fashioned way. You see, Ferguson and Wenger, they were in charge of everything. They went across
Mm.
everything. The club was built by them really, and that's what the football department is at Villa. Villa's got a very two distinctive sides: the football department and the business off the field department, and the two don't really mix. And the football side's elite. There's no it's faultless really, and that's because Unai's driving it. So that's what they want him to achieve. They want him to be long term. If he can stay for 10, 15 years, then that would be their ideal really. And I'm sure if he did, then Villa would have a lot of success.
And that's it. We often hear, I think, for fans outside of Aston Villa, people perhaps more used to Villa being sort of maybe closer to also rans within the Premier League, that, someone like Unai Emery might just get snapped up by somebody like Bayern Munich or a Manchester United. I mean, you know, why do you think, or why might that not actually be something that happens? It might have done in the past, but why now might that not happen?
Yeah, I alluded to it in the first article. You see, other media outlets, you just think or just assume as soon as a huge club comes in, a European superpower, that he'll go. But as I've said, Unai's got a very distinctive way of working where you see in other clubs he's been at where he's perhaps not had the success he's wanted at Arsenal, PSG. The internal politics in the end ate him up because he's a guy that's very obsessed with football. He's not the greatest diplomat. He's not the greatest in terms of dealing with politics, and that's why he's made such a big effort at Villa to bring in, so many, huge number of staff that's going to get bigger this summer. Damien Vidagany, who's obviously the key cog in all this, he's really the guy that's got Unai's ear the most. He's probably
Mm.
one of, arguably the most important person at the club day to day. He's the guy that deals with the politics, the people, the conduit between dressing room and the management. Um, and essentially, Villa's owners are giving him everything, what he wants in terms of the squad, the personnel. That will be a bit more difficult this summer with PSR, but with coaches, the general operation of the club, and at bigger clubs that wouldn't happen. So you
Mm.
talk about Liverpool or Man United who are going to have directors that are Julian Edwards and Dan Ashworth. They'll be the guys running the club, the football department, and they're essentially going to install a head coach who's just there to coach. Where, as you've seen at Arsenal, PSG, Emery can't. It's not at its most effective if he does that. He has to have complete control, and he knows that, and he knows how privileged he is to have that at Villa. So even if a big club came in, or a bigger club, sorry, comes in, he would think twice about it. It's not necessarily the most straightforward steps of just going there.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the article as well that you wrote, you touched on it that the dressing room reacted very positively as well.
Yeah, exactly. I had, several meetings yesterday, with people around the club and around the dressing room, and I was telling them that Unai was signing a new contract, and it was met with delight. Really, they were buzzing because he's a taskmaster. He does long hours. The sessions and the video meetings can be tedious, but the players have got total buy-in because they see it working right in front of their eyes, and they see how improved they are and how meticulously and well drilled they are now. Everyone knows their role. They feel they've got confidence stepping out on that pitch. It's never a case of they got on that pitch and think, I'm not sure of my role today. They know it drilled to the specifics. And if you buy into it, you see the results right now. It's unfolding in front of our eyes. So they're delighted that he's done that. And, you know, Emery's a elite coach. And the fact that Villa have got him is a huge coup. And that's how the players feel as well, especially young players who regard it as a privilege to be coached by him.
Yeah, and you mentioned that those close to Emery now view the setup at Villa as comparable to that of last season's treble winners, Manchester City. So how so in that regard? Is it the control factor, or is it the structure around him, basically?
Yeah, essentially. And Villa or Emery and his close aides want a structure where it doesn't seesaw. It's not erratic regarding results. I think Emery and his staff would have expected a bit more up and down, really, a few more barren runs of form. But the
Hmm.
fact that it's not happened. But the case is, when that does come, maybe next season, Champions League, hopefully injuries, they've got a robust enough structure that no one's going to panic. Everyone knows that if you stick to plan, eventually it'll become right. And you see with Guardiola, I know he's not had much failure, but when he's been knocked out, for example, the Real Madrid, that disaster semi-final Champions League a couple of years ago, they didn't panic. They didn't throw the baby out of the bathwater. They just kept it nice and simple. And that's what Emery wants. He wants that backing, but also, as I said, he's got that triangle power, him, Vidagany, Monchi, very similar to what Pep's got. He's got his two confidence, Texi and Soriano, who came from Barcelona, a bit like Emery, who came from Spanish leagues, La Liga. They're close friends. They all know what the manager wants. It's all geared towards the manager. And sometimes you don't even have to ask the manager. You can let the manager get on with the management, but you already know the type of player he wants and the general operation that he wants, the best environment.
And you also mentioned that you touched on it here about how Villa gave Emery some increased autonomy to shape the football department last summer. How big actually now is the team around Emery? How much has he changed things?
It's huge. Last time I checked, I think it was over 2 dozen in terms of Spanish speaking staff. He's got analysts, he's got doctors. He's brought in, certain things into the training ground which that he likes. From for example, I don't know if this is true, but machines in the cafeteria, the restaurants, the in first team facilities. Um, the doctors have been changed to suit him, to who he wants. It's a big operation and it's only going to get bigger. This is it analyst staff, is massive and they work 2 games ahead and they know how he works. He's very meticulous and when it comes to analysis, watches it on treadmill. He also clips his own footage together sometimes and that can take a long time. But these guys know how he works. He's got obviously a great backroom team, hasn't he? That have been there for a while. Some have been joined recently, with good knowledge of the Premier League and obviously he's added Austin McPhee as well, who he's extremely happy with. So yeah, he's got everything he wants in terms of the back room. And, he's also, more importantly, he's got license that if he wants to change something or add to it, he can.
Yeah, and you have mentioned Damien Vidagany, who is his title is personal assistant to the director of football, and then also Monchi is there as president of football operations. So, how integral are Monchi and Damien Vidagany to Unai Emery?
Yeah, they're his closest confidants, closest friends. They all share an office, or an office that's separated into 3 rooms, but they're open, no doors on them. They have breakfast together. They travel and team coach together. They know everything about one another.
Mm.
He's known Vidagany since I think around 2007, 2008.
Right.
Close friends. First, when Unai got the job, first person they rang was Damian, he and said, do you want to come to Birmingham with me? And he dropped everything and came over. Left his wife and kids in Spain. They've eventually moved over now, but that shows the backing. And Monchi as well. Who's not the best with English. Damian's got help in that respect when talking to agents, recruitment guys, but he drills the detail. He knows what the type of player that Emery wants, and that they want to go for it. So when, for example, in January, Emery was enamored by Morgan Rogers. Maybe that wasn't on the list of everyone else. Maybe it wasn't on the list of the UK scouting team or anyone else. And maybe some players at Middlesbrough had reservations or surprised. But Monchi knew that this was Emery's player. So he and Vidagany set out trying to do it. And it was only, deadline day, eventually they managed to get the deal done. But it was because of Emery's sway and the fact that he's got Monchi and Vidagany who are just backing him, fighting his corner, that they managed to to get it through. So, it's a power triangle and they're in charge of the football department and everyone else not involved just leaves them to it.
Wow, yeah. I mean, the Morgan Rogers signing already is looking like an absolute coup. Yeah. Like he's playing absolutely fantastic football at the moment. Amazing. But with Emery's contract itself, do you know how much it's worth a year?
I'm not too sure of the details regarding this new one, but you'd like to think that it'd be a substantial increase when they negotiate a longer term one in the summer. But it was around the first one he signed was around 6 million, a year, and that made him among the top bracket of coaches anyway. So I'm sure he'll be well reimbursed for his new contract, and so he should, because his value is massive. And we talk about PSR, we talk about Villa struggling off the field, generating revenue. Despite what that's come out today regarding revenue, it's still not quite there. It's not quite what those figures that certain people at the club have quoted. He's crucial, because if Villa didn't qualify for Champions League, they could be out a creek without a paddle. And the fact that he's done it and he's elevated everyone to this level, it's only going to help every other aspect of the club. So yeah, he's worth his weight in gold, isn't he?
Absolutely. And, we've talked about PSR there, looking ahead to this summer, where are Villa on that? I assume Champions League qualification, if it happens, would be a major factor in what Villa can do this summer.
Yeah, my understanding is, this changes every summer, but it would be around 35 million to get into the group stages. Of course, you could then get uplifts from the contract. So, for example, shirt sponsors will have clauses in the contract already where they've got to pay an extra couple of million if Villa qualify for Champions League. So that'll be good for the revenue. If Villa win group games, they progress into the knockouts, and that's obviously more money, and that helps as well. The new deals for front of shirt and stuff like that, I can't say too much because I'm working on it still, the piece still, but it's an increase. It's not quite the increase that have been reported. The 20 million mark it's not that, but it is bigger, so that will help. At the same time, they still have to manage it. If you look at the wage to turnover ratio, Villa are up there, only behind Forest, Leicester, and Everton. And you see what happens with those clubs recently regarding, ramifications and penalties. So they've got to be careful. They've got to tighten the budget. But the only thing I would say is that, Emery's going to sign a new contract. I'm sure he's been given confidence that they can strengthen in the summer. So they'll have to be adapted. They have to be, flexible. But I'm sure they will, and I'm sure by the time the new season rolls around, he'll have a strong team that he's happy with.
But Jacob, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate that. And for those who don't know, so most people watching this do follow your work and follow you on your line. But for those who don't, where can we find you online?
Yeah, so obviously I work for The Athletic, so find my articles there. But I'm also on Twitter, or X as it's called now, and I give some, peculiar opinions sometimes. So if you fancy that, then yeah, my username's J_Tanswell too.
Don't worry, we all give peculiar opinions here in in the Villa podcast world, I suppose. But no, Jacob, thanks very much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Top man, cheers, mate.